The finals just got its first major patch, but there is some hidden details that we have to go over with that there. We also got some helpful new documents that just released, and we even have some confirmations from the developers regarding the patch notes, and a whole bunch more. We got a lot to talk about. What's up, world? Should back in video if you're checking out all things the finals. Okay, so let's just jump right into the patch notes. We'll go over with all the nuance with that there, as there is a lot of murky details around this patch note, surprisingly, that we'll have to kind of cover through different mediums. Now, firstly, let's just go over the official patch notes. That way we can kind of break that down and then go over the further details. So this is patch 1.3.0. and they're also claiming this to be the first official major patch and not just a hotfix. Now, with most patch notes, they always have an opening kind of segment here, where they go on to say the first patch of Season 1 is a chock full of quality of life improvements and general fixes. They said the obvious one here, and that everyone is going to be happy about, is the doors in Vegas won't open in the wrong direction anymore, which surprisingly, I don't think I've ever had to deal with that occurrence, although I didn't play Vegas map a ton. But they went over here, and they quote this as being the highlights from the patch. So the first one here is that you can now see your actual position in the leaderboard once you've played a match. I think before people were having to kind of scroll through and find their rank positioning and find out where they were in ranked. They also changed the requirements for unranked tournaments from 12 to 6 matches, which I definitely preached in my previous videos. I'm super glad they pulled the requirement down. I still think ranked is a bit high. It's at like 50 matches, or 50 rounds rather, which does seem quite significant of amount, at least kind of getting into ranked. However, from a ranked perspective, I can kind of understand why the requirement is so high. However, I just think that they should do phone verification and maybe lower that requirement a little bit more. Still glad they're listening to feedback though and lowered that requirement for the unranked tournament. The recent tab in social screen is now working, which again, I wish I would have tested some of the stuff. I didn't have a lot of experience with the social screen, as I didn't really have a ton of friends that were playing the game currently, or at least I've been mainly solo queuing, so I haven't really used the social tab a ton. They also fixed some crash instances. I know a lot of people, especially since the last hotfix, a lot of people were complaining about crashes and things that are happening. I have yet to experience a crash on the finals, even dating back to the original closed beta. It's actually been one of the more smooth performing games for me in the recent months and years, even comparing to the recent Call of Duty, which I had some major issues with getting my DLSS to work in that game. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised that people are having a lot of crashes, but they can't account for all system configurations. They also went again back to fixed animation improvements to make the movement feel closer to the open beta experience, which I think that they got the movement quite right. However, there is a topic in from another video that I'll kind of go over in a little bit. However, there wasn't just movement changes, but there was some sliding changes there with that, or at least some of the physics were actually changed and they do operate different than the open beta. This is also a big one. The hold interactions that are started while moving will no longer be interrupted prematurely, which I've had so many occurrences with this, with the kind of reviving while sliding and it getting interrupted and then having to reinitiate that revive. I'm actually really glad to hear that this is fixed, or at least potentially fixed, as this was one of my grievances while playing, is sliding into the animation, trying to get a revive off or any of the interactables, which would obviously lead to the cancellation of the animation there or the revive. So I'm glad they are looking at that feedback and addressing. And then the big one here is everybody's been complaining about the servers for OCE and SA servers. However, they didn't add anything about the region lock stuff, but they did make it so that the OCE and SA servers are able to be selectable on all platforms. Now, this specifically pertains to the console platforms that were having issues selecting those regions, but now you'll be able to. Again, it was mostly just a UI error and you weren't able to manually select it, but if you had your auto on, you were able actually to be put into those regions. It was just that it wasn't displaying those regions for people and you weren't able to manually select that off the auto. So again, they had that UI fix there, and as well as being able to manually select that. Now, there is a bit of an issue with the patch notes right now, as they're not disclosing the full patch notes, and the reason why we get this is from the Discord messages they put out. So if we look here under the patch notes section of the Discord, they actually outlined that there was 300 lines of item, or at least that the changelog boasted more than 300 lines. Now, the issue with that there is we don't have 300 lines of patch notes here. We only have the highlights that they've hand selected. However, we do have some confirmation on some of the things there with that, because there is some kind of questioning around this patch notes. People are kind of concerned, why aren't they highlighting everything that's been going on, even if it's just back-end interface stuff? However, we did have confirmation on balance changes, and there was none in this major patch. So no major balancing or any balancing changes occurred in this patch note at all, or in the patch itself at all. However, again, we don't have the full patch notes here, so we do have to kind of piece together some of the stuff from the Steam database. Now, within the actual Steam database stuff, we do have a few things that were changed, or at least two things in particular that we can kind of piece together from this, which is that there was a bunch of Christmas bundles and some Christmas model backgrounds being updated and uploaded for the season. So it looks like they are having some Christmas stuff going on and some Christmas event stuff. Now, I could see why they wouldn't want to have that stuff in the patch notes. However, I assume that that's not all that was there, so I'm really disappointed that they don't have the full patch notes outlined. I think a lot of people, including myself, on the Discord as well, are really disappointed that they didn't showcase all of the patch, which they should definitely do. They should do it just like BG3 and have on the Steam page maybe just the highlights, and then if you want to view everything, you can head to the website. Now, even the website that they have linked in the Discord with all the patch notes, or quote-unquote where the patch notes are at, those still only do the highlight patch notes that are also on Steam. And if I genuinely had some feedback for the devs, it's just please put out all the patch notes with everything. Just outline it all if you can. It's not a good look to hide things or have things, even if it's just back-end stuff, and just kind of maybe glance over or gloss over what it actually is happening. A lot of people praise BG3 for putting out these extensive patch notes. Even if they're not fully read, they still should be there. So I hope for the future that they do outline everything and just include the entire patch notes if you can. Especially with all this stuff going on with the movement and the stuff that we actually do have confirmation that the movement was nerfed. Now, this wasn't in the way that you think that movement was nerfed. There's a whole video that I'm going to link down to down below that's excellent at describing this whole ordeal. Now, he goes over kind of the physics with sliding, and yes, sliding was significantly nerfed in the inertia that you receive from actually sliding. There's a bunch of other nuance and stuff to it there. I'm going to include the link down below to the actual movement video and to showcase how the movement was actually nerfed. It is quite significant, so I do hope that they addressed it either in a future update or even a blog post or a post in general. It is unfortunate to see, and I really hope that they kind of backtrack on this stuff, as the movement was perfect in beta, and I think a lot of people can agree that they didn't need the nerf there. Some of the gimmicky mechanic stuff where you could like launch yourself across the map, yeah, that needed to go, but not the inertia stuff. That needed to stay. Especially coming from a game like Apex where it has a lot of inertia through sliding, they should have kept it there. We also had a really nice document here put together. This has every weapon outlined for TTK with headshots. Everything is kind of here. So if you want to check out all the different cool stats with all the weapons and how they work and their kind of damage and things of that nature, this should be included fully in this document here. So I'm going to leave a link down below to this document and everything included in this video down below. Two other small last-minute mentionables here is that the finals is actually trending on the Xbox Store. I'm really glad to hear it's hitting the console audience, because I know that games like Hyperscape had this issue kind of getting out there to the console audience. So I'm happy to hear that the finals is actually making a presence on the console platform, because I really do need that backing. There's also a little funny thing here with the heavy class that I think probably should be pointed out. And so people were having issues with the heavy kind of looked off, or at least the arms and the hands kind of looked off. And what they ended up noticing is that the proportions of the hands were just a little small. So the heavy class does have tiny hands comparative to the other classes, and somebody here on the Reddit actually made a little bit of an edit for this, showcasing what the heavy would look like with normal arms and hands. So maybe they fix that or address that later on. We'll have to see. It is kind of funny to see the small hands and now that it's pointed out. But overall, it should about cover for today's video. If you'd like and subscribe, and until next, deuces.